Namaskar viewers, hello and welcome to Sansad TV. I'm Tina Jha. You're watching a special edition of Samvaad. In a landmark scientific breakthrough, India has taken a decisive step into the quantum future. In June this year, researchers at IIT Delhi, under the leadership of Professor Bhasker Kanseri, successfully demonstrated quantum entanglement-based free space quantum secure communication, a first of its kind in the country over a distance of more than 1 kilometer. The experiment, conducted under the DRDO-Industry-Academia Center of Excellence, marks a new era in secure communications and also strengthens India's position in the global quantum race. Today, we are joined by the scientist leading this breakthrough, Professor Bhasker Kanseri, who will talk to us about the achievement, the challenges he and his team faced while carrying out the experiment, and what the breakthrough means for India's future in quantum technologies. Professor, what an absolute pleasure to have you with us on Sansad TV. Welcome to the program.
Namaskar.
In fact, there's so much to talk to you about in terms of understanding the concepts of quantum communication, about this experimental advancement that has helped India enter into a new quantum era. But to begin with, let me congratulate you and your team for this landmark achievement.
Thank you.
Now let's begin the conversation by understanding from you about some of the most critical aspects of this experiment that you conducted in free space quantum secure communication, and why is it so significant? So it would be beneficial for us and our viewers if you could simplify for our viewers why it means so much for India, especially in context of a future of quantum secure communication.
So thank you. So first of all, when we talk about quantum secure communication, it essentially means we are trying to distribute secure keys between the users, say Alice and Bob. These are the typical names we use. So by using quantum, we are essentially using the principles of quantum mechanics to safeguard our communication. So take an example of classical communication. For example, I want to talk to you. I am here, you are sitting somewhere else, and I want to talk in such a way that somebody in between who tries to get the information should not understand anything about our communication. So how we will do it? So I can take a small key, I can try my message to encrypt with that key, and then I send it to you, which by using the same key you can decrypt. Mm-hmm. So both of us have the same key. That is called symmetric encryption. Now the problem is that how I make sure that you are having the same key? How can I distribute the key? So classically it is a big problem to distribute the key. Okay. And a quantum communication or quantum secure communication essentially uses a method called quantum key distribution, which is basically distributing the keys using the secure means of quantum principles. Now classically I have a key already. I have a priori a key. But in quantum, there is no key at all in the beginning. Mm-hmm. What we do that, we do a process of key exchange, and during the process itself, the key is generated at both places, that means with you and with me, and also it is securely distributed. So this is the beauty of quantum secure communication. So now in this our experiment, we wanted to do this communication over a free space channel. What it essentially means is that without using any wire, any cable, or even an optical fiber, we wanted to communicate between Alice and Bob. So one way to do that would be to use photons, which are essentially the carrier of light or carrier of quantum signal in our case. So we send photons from one place to another. We use some property of photon by which we can encode the information. In our case, we use the property which is called polarization. Mm-hmm. So we use polarization of photons by which we can send the information from one user to the other user. The other important part is that we are using quantum entanglement. And quantum entanglement is a very, very fascinating phenomena of quantum world, where essentially two or more bodies, even though they are very far apart from each other, behave like a single body or single system. So if suppose I am entangled with somebody else, then without even, and the other person is far, far away from me and I cannot even see it, but by doing my actions, one can immediately know what other is doing. Okay. And an example I can give you, for example, you can take two dices and you roll the dice. If they are entangled in such a way that if one comes in one dice and one also comes in the other dice, so irrespective of the distance between them, if I roll this one and I roll the other one in some other place, knowing one, getting one here will immediately tell that one has been achieved there. So the same is done with photons. So if you look into the picture, you will see that we generate photons with different polarizations. One is called horizontal H, the other one is called vertical V. So I have generated now 2 photons, and I am sending them apart to any distance. It can be either within one country, it can be even different galaxies. Now the one photon A, let us say I make a measurement and I get horizontal polarization. So I immediately know the polarization of the other because they are quantum mechanically entangled. So this is a very interesting phenomena. So what we used is that we first generated polarization entanglement. We measured one photon within the same user, say Alice. The other one was sent 1 kilometer away through free space channel to the other building, and then we made a measurement there. And by doing the measurements, we use a protocol called BBM92 protocol. With that, we can essentially generate the keys. And these keys are quantum mechanically secure. It means that if somebody tries to eavesdrop the system, it changes the nature of the photons or the property of the photons, and the users will immediately know that somebody has tried to eavesdrop the system.
That's the link that
yeah, exactly. The link,
image.
if you see here in the picture, this green beam which you see is not the quantum beam, it is a classical beam, because quantum beam, when we say, there are few photons.
Right.
Even our eyes cannot see them.
Right.
So what we use a guiding beam which is called a beacon beam. So we are sending the laser beam as a beacon beam, and then our photons are essentially following the same path because they are overlapped with this beam.
Okay.
Yeah, so we are sending that, and then by this guiding the beam, we will know the other side that where the photons are expected to reach, and then from that we can make the measurements.
Professor, it's quite an interesting phenomenon.
Yeah.
You explained it in such a simple manner to us, but I'm sure it wasn't as simple when you were conducting the experiment. Your team has achieved a secure key rate of 240 bits per second with a quantum bit error rate under 7%. So what were some of the key technical challenges that perhaps you as your team faced in establishing this over 1 kilometer free space optical line on the IIT Delhi campus?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting question. So first of all, you see that this all experiment has been done in the night, because in the daytime, these photons can come from any light source, for example, sun. So the photons which are coming from sun are basically noise for us. So we cannot get any signal out of the noise because the background is very, very large. So we have to wait till night so that there is no other light source and only the photons with some additional light which we can later on suppress. So this is one of the challenges that we have been starting somewhere at 10 in the night and running 3 or 4 a.m. in the morning. And I would like to acknowledge the help from our family members also, because they have been quite understanding in these odd hours we have been working. And our team was so dedicated that, because these experiments are so difficult in the sense that the beam, when it is traveling, it passes through this atmosphere where there is dust particle, there is pollution in Delhi, for example, there is a lot of turbulence, air turbulence, and because of that the beam becomes bigger. If you look into this video, which I have shown, you see that the beam is, the green beam, which is the laser beam, is essentially moving from its path because of all these turbulences. So it's very difficult to align the beam when the turbulence is very large. But and especially in Delhi, because it is so sometimes quite polluted, then the losses are significant. So despite that, because the idea what we wanted to do was to test this experiment or this communication in a real experimental setting. We will not go to hills every time to do communication. We have to do it in the cities as well. And cities are always polluted, wherever you go. So it means that we really need to test in our local setting, and that's what we did. We managed to go for 1 kilometer, which is quite significant, and in fact it is not a linear scaling. If I can go, for example, half a kilometer, going 1 kilometer will be even more challenging. Going 2 would be even more. So in the night, doing this experiment, distributing entanglement, making sure that the beams are aligned for longer time so that we can set up extract the keys, and also at the same time we can manage the error, which you mentioned about QBER, quantum bit error rate. This is essentially telling us that out of 100 photons, how many were really disturbed, or which were which were having errors. And it was only 7%. The threshold is 11%. So we were well below threshold essentially.
Sure.
And that's why it has been a successful experiment.
Each time there's a scientific milestone or a scientific achievement that we are celebrating, we forget to commend the efforts of those who are behind the scenes. So since we are speaking to you, let me on behalf of Sansad TV congratulate every member of your family, of your team who has worked behind this landmark achievement. And we know this has come after significant efforts, several sleepless nights, I'm sure. Since you mentioned hills in your answer, I have a question related to hills and difficult terrain where it's difficult for fiber optic to be laid down. How does free space QKD unlock the possibilities for secure communication in such areas with difficult terrain, where it's difficult to, of course, lay down the optical fiber, sometimes not just difficult, in areas at times it's not even feasible enough. So how do you explain that concept of QKD here?
Yeah. So as I said that there are two ways you can communicate. You can communicate through a fiber channel, where the light, like the telecommunication which is having currently with mobiles and everything, is essentially with optical fibers. And at the same time, you can also use free space for the communication, which can be extended later on for satellite based communication. So in case of fiber and free space, there are different type of challenges. In fibers, for example, the distances, if you look into, they always increase the losses. There is a standard amount of loss which keeps increasing, whereas in case of free space, the connecting two buildings where the fiber is not laid is something which can be quite advantageous, especially in frontier areas where our troops are placed, for example, at a hilltop, and some troop is at the ground station. Now the distance could be say 1 kilometer or of the order of that. So if we want to make a communication, we cannot lay fiber immediately. Right. But by using free space communication, we can easily set up the keys between the two places. Similarly, if we want to set up the keys at the coastal region with a naval ship, which is somewhere in the sea, so we cannot put suddenly a fiber there. Absolutely. So in all those areas where there is neither the fiber is laid down, even you look into the Delhi condition, the urban setting is very dense, and putting a fiber is really quite costly. And not only costly, there is so much cut in fiber because of this work, the civil works and other things, that the fiber becomes more and more lossy day by day. So the solution is to have such kind of free space communication for shorter distances, or you can go for longer distances using satellite, and that way you can connect all those needy people who are not having the access of fibers.
So can we say this experiment that you and your team have conducted is a precursor to quantum satellite communication in India? And how do you see this contributing to a quantum future internet specifically for our country?
So this question has two parts. First, the scaling of this experiment for longer distances. Of course, it is possible to make it longer and longer, but for satellite-based communication, we really need to look into several niche technologies. For example, the satellite is not stationary. The satellite is moving, and as the satellite is moving, you need to have your pointing to the ground station very accurately. That means you have to move accordingly in order to always be aligned. Right. And that is something which is not so easy. In fact, if you look globally, as of now, only China is the one which has achieved it. Other countries are trying to do. Even in India, we have the National Quantum Mission, and under that, there is a plan to make satellite-based quantum communication. So it is true that in order to do that, you have to first do a free space communication, but you have to, at the same time, develop several more critical technologies, like the pointing technology, like the tracking of the satellite accurately, which is a moving object, and this is a stationary object. Whereas in our case, we are still up to the stationary objects. So you see that this is more challenging, but at the same time, it is going to serve much more than just the free space communication which I was talking about. Right. The second question, which we are talking about, quantum internet. So if you look into this picture, quantum internet is essentially a quantum version of classical internet, we can say, and it is a network of several quantum networks. It's very similar to in case of classical internet. You see that we have local networks, then we have several local networks, and we need a network to connect all these local networks. So quantum networks would be using quantum computers, and in order to securely communicate between quantum computers, you need quantum internet. And if you see in the same analogy, the way I was telling, at the quantum internet and the classical internet are not going to replace one another. They are going to complement one another. Because when you want more sophisticated tasks, you want quantum computers, you need to communicate through quantum internet. And at the same time, if you are using classical computers, you still need classical internet to communicate. So our experiment, what I believe, is that would be leading to all satellite-based quantum communications in near future. And as satellite-based communication would be a part of quantum internet because it will be a part of a network, we believe that we will be essentially making building blocks for such kind of quantum networks.
Certainly. Since we're talking about future, I was reading one of your interviews post this experiment, and you've been quoted as saying that India could be technologically capable of quantum communication using satellites in the next half a decade. What would it take for us to reach there in terms of both our approach as well as the requirements in such a short span of time, and how prepared are we?
Okay, so as you know that this national quantum mission has been launched, and there are several objectives of national quantum mission. There is a vertical called quantum communication, and there are several kind of key technologies which have been identified. Right. With this, not only have a backbone network for fiber-based communication in India, which can range more than 2000 kilometers, but also to develop satellite-based quantum communication for such a large distances. Mm-hmm. So currently ISRO is taking lead toward developing satellite-based quantum communication. So, and the time duration which is currently available is about 5 years or so. So I am pretty sure that the kind of experiments we have been doing, ISRO has been doing for satellites, we are pretty capable of doing this in half a decade or so. And at the same time, because we are talking about quantum networks, the fiber-based communication is also going to parallelly spread over the country for such a large distances. So both will be complementing each other to some extent.
So how are we scaling up our networks or integrating with the classical networks is something that we will delve upon in due course of the program. But let me also ask you a related question on a previous experiment that you and your team had conducted, which was on India's first intercity quantum communication link, the 2022 Vindhyachal-Prayagraj demonstration. And then in 2024, the 100-kilometer optical fiber-based QKD. Tell us more about how these experiments happened. How did these two experiments and the learnings, gave you perhaps some kind of experience for the most recent one that we are discussing on the program? And if you could also share with us what's next on your roadmap.
Oh, yeah. So sometime in 2020, we decided that we should start quantum communication related activities at IIT Delhi. And that time, we were supported by a center called DIA-COE. Maybe I will come about it in detail later on how it works. However, the idea was to demonstrate field QKD, and we along with a team of DRDO actually developed a protocol, a quantum protocol for communication, and we took our systems to a dark fiber which was available between Prayagraj and Vindhyachal. Mm-hmm. And that fiber was the standard fiber by which the communication normally happens in classical regime. So we set our transmitter at one place, which was in Prayagraj, our receivers at Vindhyachal, and we made India's first quantum communication over fiber that was more than 100 kilometers between Prayagraj and Vindhyachal. So that was a great learning because we were first time going from our bed of roses, which is actually in the lab, yes, to in a field where the settings are completely different. We were working on in a server which was colder than 18 degrees sometime in February, and there was nothing like a dark room where we could do experiments. It was all open. We were have a table for doing all the experiments in one side and similarly the other side. However, from that we learned a lot that how our systems should be, how robust they should be, so that they could be taken into the field. So after that, this 100-kilometer communication, we ourselves decided to go for even longer distances, and we thought that is there any way we can improve these distances for 200 or even more. And for that, we ourselves did a lot of research on those protocols. And finally, in 2023, we came up with a more revised version of the protocol, which was actually used in this intercity communication also. But this time, we had improved in such a way that we could go up to 380 kilometers in the fiber. And such stretch was not available, so we did it over a fiber spool. That means a fiber which is around a box, and it has a long distance of about 100 kilometers. We can put several such 100-kilometer fibers together. Right. So that was all about the prepare and measure kind of protocols, which doesn't use entanglement as of now. But later on we thought that, okay, the more secure protocols would actually be based on entanglement. So can we generate entanglement and use it as a architecture for all our communication so that we are more secure than prepare and measure? And then we started this 100-kilometer activity which you mentioned last year, where we generated entanglement in fiber. We distributed it again using the fiber spools, 50 kilometer in one side, 50 kilometer on the other side, and that way we could have a 100-kilometer entanglement distribution in the fiber. And then not only that, we have done a QKD with this, which could give us some key rates of around 1 kilobits per second. And then IIT Delhi has a fiber which is actually underground within its campus. So we landed that fiber, which is very old fiber and quite lossy, but we thought let's test this entanglement distribution within an underground fiber as well, which is actually a field setting. And with this 10-kilometer fiber, we could also demonstrate that yes, that is exactly compatible with fiber-based entanglement QKD, and we could generate keys using this underground fiber as well. So basically, we had already done several proof of concept experiments, including this 1-kilometer experiment recently. Now the next stage which we want to do is first to prototype them in such a way that we could actually take them in the field. So for that, the prototyping will be one of the areas which we want to do. Once we will prototype them, we would like to extend the distances, improvise them, so that we could finally go for some implementation of these protocols. So, and also, since all these protocols are involving hybrid approaches, like one is free space, one is fiber, one is using prepare and measure protocol, other one is using entanglement-based protocol. So these are a hybrid structure. So that's why we want to make a hybrid network now, where we can connect different cities of India using all these kind of developed technologies which we have proof of concept available as of now. We will prototype them and then probably implement them and make a network by which we could communicate between different cities using these protocols, and probably look into some use cases for that, which would be useful for the society as well.
Absolutely. So there are so many remarkable experiments that are being conducted. But since you mentioned the DRDO-Industry-Academia Center of Excellence model, tell us about how crucial have they been over the years in accelerating such cutting-edge research, not just at IIT Delhi, but also at other institutions?
Yeah, so these DIA COEs, which we sometimes call DIA COE, because it essentially tells about DRDO collaboration with academia and also with industry. So basically there are three stakeholders. Yes. And the whole goal of these DIA COEs is to provide an ecosystem where we can have an idea, which is basically a fundamental concept, which is starting. We develop some technology with the help of academia. That's what we have been doing. Yes. And then translate that technology to some startup or some industry so that it could be market ready, and finally to commercialize it. So it's a kind of a complete chain. And the goal of this chain is to go for a technology innovation and also to support Make in India, because the goal is finally to indigenously develop these technologies. And I am happy to say that in IIT Delhi, it started nearly 7-8 years before, and it has been very, very successful, especially in many areas. If you look into internet, you will find that there are many technologies which are being translated to the industries. And this model is actually being used in several other institutions. As of now, I think there are around 15 DIA COEs which are operating, and all are roughly going with the same kind of models to essentially focus on critical and futuristic technologies, to support them with appropriate funds, because many of these technologies are infrastructure intensive. So you really need to spend a lot of funds in order to develop that infrastructure. But ultimately it will be finally successful so that the impact can be to the society.
Absolutely, and perhaps these experiments are meant to, they're being hailed as the new era, new quantum era for India. So in that context, if I could ask you, how close are we to establishing a national quantum mission grid? And what role do you see your institution, IIT Delhi, playing in that, playing in realizing that vision?
Yeah, so you talked about National Quantum Mission. So first of all, I would like to appreciate the efforts which are being made by our Honorable Prime Minister and his government about a vision of developing quantum technologies. So you see that for last 4 or 5 years, there has been tremendous activities toward National Quantum Mission. The mission has been launched, and there are 4 hubs which are being established, and in IIT Delhi there is a hub on quantum materials, and at the same time there are several technical groups from different hubs. And our particular technical group, which is essentially supporting IIT Madras hub, which is on communication, and the goal of our hub is to contribute toward the national grid of communication. So as I mentioned in the beginning, that there is a goal of 2000 kilometer terrestrial network which is using fibers to be deployed in next probably 4 or 5 years, and we are from IIT Delhi are interested with a role of entanglement-based technologies, because we feel that this is the highlight for next decade and even more. So we are going to, in fact, we have a project which is named as Trusted Node-Free Quantum Secure Communication Hybrid Networks, which is in short form we call it Tehqiqat, which essentially means to investigate through research. So we are going to make a hybrid quantum network which is having both free space and fiber kind of capabilities, which is having continuous variable and discrete variable capabilities, entanglement and paper and measure capabilities, and connecting four major cities, which includes Delhi, Noida, Sonipat and IIT Roorkee. So this will be a more than 300 kilometer fiber network with 6 nodes, and we will be able to connect these nodes through both fiber and free space based entanglement based communication. And also we are feeling that this will be a test bed for many more startups or industries which will be able to utilize these resources which are either being developed here, or they can come and work and utilize those facilities, and finally contribute toward developing quantum communication as an application for society at large.
Absolutely, and not just in terms of enhancement in functionality. You've also put enhancement of security as one of the key aspects of quantum communication. So how critical is it, especially for our strategic sectors, if I may ask you, particularly defense? And I ask you this because given India's geography, our security always remains a top concern for us. China is another adversary. So given the potential threats, how important or how critical will quantum communication be for our strategic sectors like defense?
Yeah, so as you know that as of now we are using classical cryptography.
Yes.
And in classical cryptography the key sharing problem is typically dealt with some trusted couriers. So it can be a trusted either a person or a way by which the keys can be distributed. But you know that the trusted things may not remain every time trusted. It's like that if you make a chain, and the strength of the chain is its weakest link. So if we are making trusted node-based technologies, it is always risky that these trusted nodes can be compromised and our security can be at the stake. So in order to solve this problem, entanglement comes with a solution that you can actually develop technologies like quantum repeaters, by which you can go for long distance communication which is trusted node free. There will be no trusted node in between. That means that it will be fully secure. In fact, entanglement provides us a very remarkable functionality as well, that the source which is generating those entangled photons, even if it is with some adversary, you can, as long as it is giving you entangled photons, you can always make a secure communication. So that means that any compromise of the source can also still lead to the security. And on the top of that, in fact, entanglement can provide us what we call I mean, we can have devices which can be secure always, despite the fact that they are with the adversary. So it is called measurement device independent QKD. Measurement devices, it will not at all affected by measurement devices, because it is a specific feature of quantum entanglement. So you see that entanglement has several security features, and these security features can be employed for defense sectors, for securely communicating the keys and securely making communication. Either it is fiber-based communication, or it is through between two stations which are connected through free space or through satellites. So,
Professor, you've listed out so simply and so beautifully the many advantages of quantum technology, but we still we understand that this technology is still an emerging field. So as somebody who's led so many experiments which will be very, very vital for how our future in quantum communication shapes up to be, what would your message be for the young researchers, the young students of science who are willing or who are keen in contributing to this technology?
Yeah, so as I mentioned in the beginning, that this is a very emerging area.
Yes.
And in fact, it's in its nascent stage, because a lot of things need to yet to be explored.
Yes.
Not only explored, they need to be learned, and they need to be experimentally tested. So there are endless opportunities. If you see, there is a large scope for people to come to work in this area and to essentially develop devices. In fact, not only for researchers, even for startups, for industries who are interested in quantum technologies, they should come up, they should take a challenge of working on those technologies. And as I mentioned, that the future is of quantum, because all the classical things what we have been seen, they can be improved significantly by using quantum principles. So if this is true, then that's why that in every walk of life, people are trying to use quantum technologies. So my message to the newcomers or to the researchers would be that since it's a very new technology, it's a very new area, you first need to skill yourself. You need to, and not only in one area, this quantum technology requires multidisciplinary approach. Right. So there should be talented skills developed in several areas. This skill development needs to be added with a lot of patience. Because if we are thinking that something we want to develop in one day, it is not going to happen. It's a new technology, you need to learn a lot. Even if you have developed something, you have made some communication, it's not that the next step is to implement it, to test it for a longer duration so that you are sure that it is secure, it is really foolproof, and then once it is mature enough, a lot of R&D has been done on it, scientifically it is validated, then only you should go for its implementation. Right. So I feel that for the newcomers, for the startups or for the industries, since there are endless opportunities, even government has come up with a lot of funds under National Quantum Mission by which they can be supported. Even students who are essentially doing their graduations here, and then they are learning quite a lot on these technologies, often go abroad. Right. So if they see that this opportunity is here itself, why don't they have to, they can stay here, they can utilize those resources which are being offered, and then strengthen our own country.
Absolutely, that's most important, especially in strengthening a future quantum internet that we are envisioning for our country. Professor, to wrap up the conversation, and since you spoke about how this technology is still at its nascent stage, there is so much that can be explored and put to use that this technology can offer to not just civilian areas but strategic sectors as well, as we spoke. But as a scientist, what excites you the most about the potential of this technology?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, that it's a dual use technology. Not only in the strategic area, it has applications in almost every walk of life. And that's why I feel that it is quite interesting, because if you really explore it, you investigate more and more, you will see that in fact there is much more to explore further. So I feel that in every walk of life you can use quantum technologies. In fact, by learning quantum and by doing quantum, we can actually explore the whole universe. We can start from a nanoparticle to a massive star, and everything can be understood once we fundamentally look into quantum technologies and employ them with with our classical technologies, because classical technologies are also very important.
Yes.
So a complementary approach would be very interesting, and that can enable us to go far in the depth of the knowledge of all these and to fundamentally explore the whole universe.
Absolutely. There's so much potential that's still waiting to be explored as far as quantum technology is concerned. The beginning has been made through Professor Kanseri and his team. They've led several experiments, and something that has sort of set the tone for a future of quantum internet that we've spoken about, how critical it is for a future of quantum communication and the many advantages that Professor has listed out for us. But with that, we'll have to wrap up the conversation because time allows us to take up only that much on this edition of Samvaad. Once again, thank you, Professor, for joining us on Sansad TV and sharing and in fact simplifying these experiments that you and your team have conducted for us and our viewers. Absolute pleasure to speak to you, and we look forward to more conversations in future. Wish you the very best with the future experiments that you must have been occupied with. So all the best to you and your team. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of Samvaad, viewers. Thank you very much to you as well for your time.
Thank you.
To watch more programs of Sansad TV, subscribe to our YouTube channel and don't forget to like and share them.